everyone now is familiar with and has probably played with a bit and thought about and somewhat understands. But I want to then talk about what comes next and how the large language models we see today, they're one step in an ongoing series of AI revolutions. It's going to lead us to some AI that can do some pretty amazing things and be transformative in a variety of radical ways. I want to start with the concept of AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence, which is a term that I introduced would have been 2004 or 5. At that time, it was not such a popular idea because most people in the AI field in academia or industry figured it was just indefinitely far off and they didn't have to worry about it. At that time, it was more something you talked about in the pub after the AI conference rather than in the AI conference. Of course, things have changed today, and for example, Demis Hassabis, who has been explicitly pursuing AGI for a couple decades, not as long as I have, but for a while, we found that Google DeepMind, he's an AGI guy, he's now running all of AI at Google, right? But in 2004, when I introduced this concept, it was a little more obscure, but it was a very clear concept then, and going back decades before that. I mean, an AGI system needs to be able to generalize far beyond its training data, far beyond its original programming, take a big leap to deal with new things that it didn't encounter or experience before. And, to be an infinitely general AGI is probably not possible given the constraints of the physical universe. Humans aren't infinitely general either. Like I would be very poor at running a 750 dimensional maze, right? I mean, we're somewhat specialized to the experience that we have, but we can deal with the internet, we can deal with ChatGPT, we can deal with a lot of things that aren't baked into our DNA and didn't exist when we went to school, right? So we can leap beyond our experience to a significant degree. Narrow AI systems are AI systems that can do smart things, interesting things, clever things, but they're pretty much tied to their initial programming into the data on which they've been trained. And the AIs that are doing so much amazing stuff in the commercial world now are still what I'd call narrow AIs, although this distinction has become interesting in the ChatGPT era because here you have systems, large language models, that they can't go too far beyond their training data, but their training data is immense, right? If your training data is the whole web, you don't have to go that far beyond your training data to do an awful lot of what human beings can do. And the surprise that some people feel at the capability of a system like ChatGPT is perhaps because people have tended to overestimate the importance of individual thinking and underestimate the power of the corpus of cultural knowledge, which is embodied in all the language on the internet. But even though you can do a lot by improvising very slightly in all the data on the internet, that's still not the same as AGI because these systems are not leaping tremendously beyond what's there in their training data. And I mean, we can look at this more analytically. If you look at the limitations of current large language models, I'd say that the core cognitive limitations are as follows. These systems cannot do complex multi-stage reasoning. So they can do some reasoning, and there are techniques like chain of thought prompting to let them do reasoning better than they do if you just ask them to reason in the simplest way. But I mean, ChatGPT can't write a science paper. I mean, the nature of writing a good science paper is you're doing complex multi-stage reasoning that does go beyond your training data and beyond what you were taught. That's why it's original science, right? I mean, ChatGPT can write something that looks like a science paper that would fool a non-scientist into thinking it was a science paper, but it would actually be either bullshit or it would be just a retreading of stuff that was in its training data, right? And I mean, this now most people don't write a lot of science papers in their